You said yes last night, Mafia boss told the shocked bride who woke up wearing his ring. The heavy crystal chandeliers of the Grand Riverton Hotel hummed with electric light, casting a golden glow over the ballroom. Outside, the coastal city of Riverton was being battered by a relentless October storm, rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. But inside, the air was still and perfumed with expensive lilies. Hallie Parker adjusted the floral centerpiece on table 5 with trembling fingers. She was not the bride at this particular event. She was the event coordinator, 24 years old and exhausted deep into her bones. She'd been on her feet for 12 hours, ensuring that another woman's happiest day went off without a single hitch. It was her job to make things perfect, to smooth over cracks, to hide the wires and the mess so that everyone else could enjoy the fantasy. "You are good at this," she told herself, straightening a fork by a fraction of an inch. "You are good at pretending everything is fine." A heavy hand landed on her shoulder, making her jump. "Careful, Hallie." A smooth, cultured voice murmured near her ear. "You're looking a little frayed around the edges." "We cannot have that. Not with our own big day tomorrow." Hallie stiffened, forcing a smile onto her face before she turned around. Elliot Crane stood there, impeccable in a charcoal suit that cost more than Hallie made in 3 months. He was handsome in the way politicians and news anchors were handsome, polished, symmetrical, and completely vacant behind the eyes unless he wanted something. He was the heir to the Crane shipping fortune, the catch of the season, the man every mother in Riverton wanted for their daughter, and he was Hallie's fiancé. "I am just finishing up." "Elliot," Hallie said, her voice sounding thinner than she liked. "The shift is almost over. I will be ready for the rehearsal dinner." Elliot looked her up and down, his gaze critical. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her neck just a second too long. "You should have worn the pearls I sent you," he said. His tone light, but his eyes hard. "That necklace looks cheap. It detracts from the brand. Hallie, we are a brand now." "It was a gift from my grandmother," Hallie said, her hand instinctively going to the small silver locket at her throat. Elliot gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Wear the pearls tonight and change your lipstick. That shade makes you look washed out." He turned to walk away, checking his phone as he went, assuming she would obey. He always assumed she would obey. It had started slowly over the last year. First, it was suggestions about her clothes. Then it was checking her text messages to make sure she was not being bothered by work. Then it was the slow isolation, the way he made her feel guilty for seeing her friends until she stopped seeing them altogether. Hallie watched him go, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. She looked down at her hand. The diamond on her ring finger was massive, a flawless rock that weighed her hand down. Everyone who saw it gasped. They told her she was the luckiest girl in the world. They told her Elliot was a prince. They did not know about the bruises on her upper arm from where he had grabbed her last week, because she laughed too loud at a charity gala. They did not know about the way the air left the room when his mood shifted. Later that afternoon, Hallie sat at a late lunch with her mother and Elliot at a bistro near the waterfront. The rain was still pouring, drumming a frantic rhythm on the awning. "Mom," Hallie started, staring at her salad. "I was thinking, maybe we could postpone the wedding, just for a few months. I feel like things are moving very fast." Her mother, Susan, dropped her fork. Her eyes went wide, darting to Elliot to see his reaction before she even looked at her daughter. "Hallie, do not be ridiculous," Susan hissed. "The invitations are sent. The Cranes have paid for everything. Do you have any idea how much this wedding costs? Do you know how many of your father's medical bills Elliot's father has quietly taken care of?" "I know," Hallie whispered, shrinking into her seat. "I just feel—" Elliot reached under the table. His hand clamped around her wrist, his thumb digging into the sensitive tendons and soft skin with bruising force. Hallie gasped, her eyes snapping to his. Elliot was smiling at the waiter who was refilling his water glass. His expression was perfectly pleasant, but under the table, his grip was like a steel vice, grinding her bones together. "She's just having pre-wedding jitters," Elliot said smoothly to Susan, ignoring the way Hallie's face drained of color. Hallie tends to overthink. She knows she would be lost without me. Right, darling. He squeezed harder, a sharp flare of pain shooting up her arm. Right, Hallie choked out. He released her instantly. Hallie pulled her hand into her lap, rubbing the red marks forming on her skin, while her mother launched into a monologue about the floral arrangements, completely oblivious to the violence that had just occurred 3 feet away from her. Trapped. The word echoed in Hallie's mind. She was completely trapped. Her family's financial stability, her father's health, her own reputation. It was all held in Elliot's manicured hands. The rehearsal dinner that evening was held in a private dining room at one of Riverton's most exclusive restaurants. The room was filled with the Crane family's associates, wealthy investors, local politicians, and men in dark suits who spoke in low voices. Hallie felt like an ornament, dressed in the silk cocktail dress Elliot had selected, wearing the pearls that felt like a cold noose around her neck. During the toasts, Hallie stood up to thank Elliot's parents. She was nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she held her champagne flute. "I want to thank the Cranes for welcoming me," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I come from a different world than this, but—" She turned to look at Elliot, and her elbow bumped a wine glass on the table. It tipped over, sending a splash of red wine across the pristine white tablecloth. The room went silent. It was a minor accident, a nothing moment. But Elliot's face darkened instantly. The mask of the doting fiancé slipped, revealing the simmering rage beneath. He stood up, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at the stain, but he leaned in close to her, his lips brushing her ear so that only she could hear him. "You clumsy little embarrassment," he whispered, the venom in his voice making her blood run cold. "If you ever humiliate me like this after we are married, I will make you wish you were never born. Fix your face and sit down." Hallie sat, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could feel the tears pricking her eyes. She excused herself, mumbling something about needing the restroom, and fled the dining room. She locked herself in the furthest stall of the marble-tiled bathroom, pressing her forehead against the cool door. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. This was the rest of her life. Fear. Control. Walking on eggshells to avoid triggering a monster. She stayed there for 10 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to force herself to go back out there. The bathroom door opened. Hallie held her breath, expecting another guest, but then she heard heavy footsteps and the lock of the main door clicking shut. Male voices. "It is done," a voice said. It was Elliot. Hallie froze. He must have thought the bathroom was empty. "Are you sure?" another voice asked. A deeper, rougher voice. "The girl is a loose end, Elliot. If she gets cold feet—" "She is not a loose end," Elliot snapped. "She is a problem that will be handled. She has no spine. Once the ring is on her finger legally, the deal is sealed. The union merges the logistics routes your people need with my family's shipping infrastructure. She is just the collateral to make it look legitimate." The other man laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "And if she figures out what you are really moving in those crates—" Elliot's tone turned dismissive. "She thinks I am just a businessman. She has no idea she is marrying into the syndicate, and if she asks questions, I will shut her up, permanently. If I have to." Hallie clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. The world tilted on its axis. Syndicate. Moving crates. Shut her up permanently. It was not just abuse, it was crime. Organized, dangerous crime. She was being sold. Her marriage was a business transaction to cover up illegal smuggling. The main door unlocked and opened. "We need to get back," Elliot said. "I have to go drag my blushing bride out of here." The door clicked shut again. Hallie did not think. She did not plan. Pure animal instinct took over. She pushed open the stall door. She looked at herself in the mirror, pale skin, wide, terrified eyes, the pearls around her neck. She clawed at the clasp, ripping the necklace off and leaving it on the counter. She left her clutch bag. She left her phone. She could not be tracked. She ran. She burst out of the bathroom and spotted the service exit at the end of the hallway. She hit the crash bar and spilled out into the alleyway. The storm hit her like a physical blow. The rain was coming down in sheets, instantly soaking her silk dress and plastering her hair to her skull. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the ground, but Hallie did not stop. She kicked off her high heels and ran barefoot onto the pavement, the cold water biting at her skin. She ran blindly, putting distance between herself and the restaurant. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like lead. She wove through the downtown streets, avoiding the main roads, terrified that Elliot's black sedan would pull up alongside her at any moment. She had no money, no phone, no plan. She just needed somewhere dark, somewhere to hide. She turned a corner and saw a neon sign buzzing in the rain. Ember. A stylized flame logo flickered above a heavy black door. A large man in a security jacket stood under the awning. It was a nightclub. It looked expensive, intimidating, and exactly like the kind of place Elliot would never step foot in. Hallie stumbled toward it. The bouncer looked her up and down, a barefoot woman in a soaked, ruined cocktail dress, shivering violently. "Please," she managed to gasp. "I just need to sit down, please." The bouncer frowned but stepped aside, opening the heavy door. The contrast was jarring. Inside, the air was warm and dry, smelling of expensive cologne and smoke. Deep, thumping bass vibrated through the floor. The lighting was low, mostly shadows and amber accents. Hallie hugged her arms around herself, water dripping from her hem onto the polished floor. She moved deeper into the club, trying to disappear into the crowd. She found a corner near the bar and leaned against the wall, her legs giving out. She closed her eyes, trying to stop the room from spinning. Hey there. Beautiful. A hand grabbed her bare arm. Hallie flinched violently, her eyes snapping open. A man stood there, swaying slightly. He was well-dressed but drunk, his eyes glassy and predatory. "You look like a drowned rat," he slurred, stepping into her personal space. "Let me buy you a drink to warm you up." "No," Hallie said, her voice cracking. "Please leave me alone." She tried to pull her arm away, but his grip tightened. It reminded her of Elliot. The panic she had been holding back surged up in her throat. "Do not be like that," the man sneered. "I am just being nice. You look like you need a friend. I said let go." Hallie cried out, panic rising in her pitch. Suddenly, the air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. A shadow fell over the drunk man. "Let her go." The voice was not loud. It was calm, deep, and commanded absolute authority. The drunk man blinked and looked up. Standing behind him was a man who looked like he owned the night itself. He was tall, with broad shoulders clad in a black dress shirt, the top buttons undone. His face was striking, sharp jawline, dark hair, and eyes the color of cold steel. The drunk man sneered, trying to save face. "Who are you? This is private conversation." The tall man did not blink. He reached out and placed his hand on the drunk man's wrist, the one holding Hallie. He didn't wrench it. He just applied pressure. The drunk man yelped, his fingers springing open. "I am the owner," the tall man said, his voice void of emotion, "and you are leaving." 2 large security guards materialized from the shadows. The drunk man, realizing he had made a severe error, stumbled back, muttering apologies before being escorted quickly toward the exit. Hallie stood frozen, clutching her bruised arm. She looked up at her savior, expecting him to walk away now that the disturbance was handled, but he didn't. He stood perfectly still, watching her. His gaze was intense, intelligent, and uncomfortably penetrating. He took in her wet hair, the ruined dress, the terror in her eyes, and the lack of shoes. "You are shaking," he observed. Hallie let out a jagged breath. "I ran away," she blurted out. The words tumbled out of her before she could stop them. "I ran away from my wedding. I cannot go back." Something flickered in the man's steel eyes. Surprise? Curiosity? He signaled to the bartender, then looked back at her. "Come with me." He did not touch her. He simply turned and walked toward a velvet rope guarding a staircase. Hallie hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed him. She had nowhere else to go. He led her up to a VIP lounge that overlooked the dance floor. It was soundproofed, the thumping music fading to a dull hum as the glass door closed. The room was luxurious, filled with leather couches and dim lamps. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a plush armchair. Hallie sat, curling her legs up beneath her for warmth. A moment later, a waitress appeared with a bottle of water and a clean, dry towel. "Drink," the man said. "Not alcohol. You need clarity." He sat on the sofa opposite her, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. He watched her with that unnerving focus. "I am Adrian," he said. "Adrian Romano." Hallie froze mid-sip. The name. She knew that name. Everyone in Riverton whispered that name. The Romanos were not just nightclub owners. They were the power behind the city's shadows, the rival family to the people Elliot associated with. She lowered the water bottle. "I am Hallie," she whispered. "Tell me why you are running." "Hallie," Adrian said softly, "and do not lie to me." Hallie looked at him. He was dangerous. She knew that. But unlike Elliot, whose danger was hidden behind a smile, Adrian's danger was out in the open. It felt honest. She started talking. She told him about the dress, the wrist grabbing, the threats, the family pressure, and then she told him about the phone call. He said I was a problem to be handled. Hallie said, her voice gaining strength as the horror of it replayed in her mind. He said the marriage was just a deal to merge his family's shipping with the Cade syndicate. He said if I asked questions, he would shut me up permanently. At the mention of the Cade syndicate, Adrian's expression hardened into stone. The relaxed posture vanished. He sat up straighter, a lethal sharpness entering his eyes. "Cade," he repeated, "you are marrying Elliot Crane?" "I was supposed to," Hallie said, "but I can't. He will find me. His family owns half the city. My parents, they will just send me back to him. I have no money. I have no phone. I am trapped." She put her face in her hands, fighting back a fresh wave of sobs. "I do not know why I am telling you this. You cannot help me. No one can stop them." Adrian was silent for a long time. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the ventilation system. Hallie wiped her eyes and looked at him. He was studying her, calculating, his mind working through a complex equation. "You are right," Adrian said finally. His voice was low, vibrating with a dark promise. "Walking away won't be enough. Elliot is proud, and the Cade family is ruthless. If you just run, they will hunt you down. They will use your family to drag you back." Hallie felt the blood drain from her face. "Then what do I do?" Adrian stood up. He walked over to the window that overlooked the club below, watching the chaotic mass of people dancing in the dark. "There is one way," he said, his back to her. "One way to make you untouchable. One way to make it very hard for Elliot Crane to ever claim you again." He turned around slowly. "The Cranes and the Cades fear one thing in this city. They fear me." He walked back to the table and looked down at her, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning with intensity. "If you want to be safe, Hallie, you need a shield that they cannot break." Hallie stared up at him, her heart pounding in her throat. She did not understand what he was suggesting, but she felt the gravity of it, the shift in the air. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Adrian Romano extended a hand toward her. "I am saying that if you want to survive this, you need to belong to someone else, someone stronger. Belong to someone else." The words hung in the cool air of the VIP lounge, heavy and absolute, silencing the distant thrum of the bass from the club below. Hallie stared at Adrian Romano, her breath catching in her throat. The rain outside lashed against the soundproof glass, a chaotic backdrop to the stillness inside. "Excuse me?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling. Adrian did not blink. He sat back, the leather of the sofa creaking softly, and crossed one leg over the other. He looked like a king on a dark throne, analyzing a chessboard. "Elliot Crane treats you like property," Adrian said, his voice low and devoid of pity. "He thinks he owns you. His family thinks they own you. To them, you are an asset, a merger, and because they see you as property, they will never stop looking for you. If you run to another city, they will find you. If you go to the police, they will bury the report." He leaned forward again, his steel gray eyes locking onto hers. "But there is a hierarchy in this city. Hallie, the Cranes have money. The Cades have muscle. But the Romano name, That is a line in the sand. Even the Cade Syndicate hesitates to cross it without a very good reason. Hallie wrapped her arms tighter around her shivering body. I do not understand. You said I need to belong to someone else. I am proposing a trade, Adrian said calmly. You want protection. I want to send a message to the people trying to move in on my territory. So, we make a deal. You marry me. The room seemed to tilt. Hallie stood up abruptly, her legs shaking so hard she almost fell. She began to pace the small space, her bare feet sinking into the expensive rug. Marry you? She repeated, her voice rising in panic. I just met you 10 minutes ago. You are... She stopped, looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. You are a mob boss. I am a businessman who protects his interests, Adrian corrected smoothly, and tonight, you are the interest. He stood up and walked to the small bar in the corner, pouring himself a glass of amber liquid. He did not offer her alcohol this time. He kept her on water. He wanted her clear-headed. Think about it, he said, his back to her. If you are Hallie Parker, the runaway bride, Elliot will drag you back by your hair and no one will stop him because legally, you are nothing to anyone else. But if you are Hallie Romano, if you are the wife of Adrian Romano, he turned, taking a slow sip of his drink. If he touches you then, he declares war on my entire organization. He won't do it. He's a bully. Hallie, not a soldier. He fears consequences. I am the consequence. Hallie stopped pacing. She looked at him. Really looked at him. He was terrifying. Yes, the scar above his eyebrow, the lethal grace of his movements, the darkness that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. But he was offering her a weapon. He was offering to be the monster that ate the monster she feared. Why? She asked, her voice barely audible. Why would you do this? You do not know me. I have nothing to offer you. I am a waitress, an event planner. I have $300 in a bank account that Elliot probably already froze. Adrian set his glass down. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. For a moment, the mask slipped. Hallie saw something flicker in his eyes, an old, weary anger that had nothing to do with her. 2 years ago, he said quietly. The Cade family, the ones backing Elliot. Put 3 of my men in the hospital and burned down a warehouse I owned. They killed a friend of mine. He took a step closer to her, stopping just outside her personal space. I do not like owing debts, Hallie, and I do not like bullies. Taking Elliot Crane's prize away from him, making him watch as you walk away untouchable, that is worth more to me than money. Hallie stared at him, searching for the lie. She found none. He was not doing this out of charity. He was doing it out of spite, out of strategy, and somehow that made her believe him more. If he had promised her a fairy tale, she would have run, but he was promising her revenge. She sank back onto the couch, the fight draining out of her. She was so tired, her bones felt brittle. It is insane, she whispered. It is survival, Adrian countered. He sat down next to her, not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could smell the scent of him. Sandalwood, rain, and something sharp like gun oil. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, mirroring her posture. I know you are scared, he said, his voice dropping to a rumble that vibrated in her chest. You should be... My world is not a playground. It is dangerous. People die. Then why are you offering to pull me into it? Hallie asked, turning her head to look at him. Because the alternative is Elliot, he said simply. Hallie flinched at the name. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. She thought of Elliot's grip on her wrist under the table, the cold whisper in her ear at the rehearsal dinner, a problem to be handled. She looked at Adrian's hands. They were large, resting on his knees. His knuckles were scarred. They were hands that had done violence. She did not doubt that, but they remained still. He did not reach for her. He did not try to intimidate her with his size. He just waited. She felt a strange, fragile sense of safety blooming in the center of her terror. It was the safety of being near a tiger that had decided not to eat you. Would you... Hallie started, then stopped. She swallowed hard. Ask, Adrian commanded softly. Would you ever hurt me?" she asked, her voice shaking so hard the words fractured, like he did. The air in the room went perfectly still. Adrian's jaw clenched tight, the muscle feathering under the skin. He turned his head slowly to look at her. His eyes were dark, intense, and filled with a sudden, fierce gravity. He lifted his right hand. Hallie instinctively flinched, pulling back. Adrian froze. He did not lower his hand, but he did not advance. He simply laid it on the coffee table between them, palm open, fingers spread, a peace offering. A demonstration of control. "Look at me." "Hallie," he said. She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I am not a good man," Adrian said, his voice rough. "I have done things that would make you nightmares, but I do not hurt women, and I do not hurt what is mine to protect." He held her gaze, refusing to let her look away. "If you wear my ring," he vowed, "no one hurts you. Not Elliot, not the Cade Syndicate, and certainly not me. Never." The word hung there. Never. Hallie looked at his hand on the table. It was inches from hers. Slowly, tentatively, she unclasped her own hands. She reached out. Her fingers hovered over his for a second, trembling, before she lowered her palm onto the back of his hand. His skin was warm, solid. He did not grab her. He did not close his fingers around hers. He just let her touch him, let her feel that he was steady. They sat there for a long time, the storm raging outside, two strangers connected by a desperate touch in a dimly lit room. "I cannot go back to him," she whispered, the tears finally spilling over again. "I would rather die than go back to that house." "Then do not go back," Adrian said. He turned his hand over slowly beneath hers, catching her fingers in a loose, gentle grip. "Marry me, Hallie, tonight. We do it now. Before he realizes you are truly gone, by sunrise, you will be untouchable." Hallie closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's pleading face. She thought of the debts. Then she thought of Elliot's cold, dead eyes. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the man who offered her a shield made of blood and shadows. "Okay," she whispered. Adrian squeezed her hand. A brief, firm pressure. "You are sure?" "Yes," she said, opening her eyes. "Yes." Adrian wasted no time. He stood up, pulling out his phone. He made 2 calls in rapid Italian, his voice sharp and commanding. "We are going," he said, pocketing the phone. "My driver is out back. My lawyer is meeting us at the chapel." "The chapel?" Hallie asked, standing up on shaky legs. "There is a 24-hour place near the courthouse," Adrian said. "It is not romantic, but it is legal." They moved quickly. Adrian took off his suit jacket and draped it over Hallie's shoulders. It swallowed her frame, heavy and warm, smelling of him. He guided her down a private service elevator, bypassing the club floor entirely. A sleek black sedan was waiting in the alleyway, the engine idling. The rain was still torrential. Adrian opened the back door for her, shielding her head with his arm as she ducked inside. The drive was a blur of neon lights and rain-streaked windows. Hallie sat in the corner, clutching the lapels of Adrian's jacket. She felt numb. This was a dream. It had to be a dream. Adrian sat on the other side of the seat, typing furiously on his phone. He did not try to make small talk. He let her have her silence. They arrived at a small, nondescript brick building with a neon sign that read, "Wedding Chapel, Notary Public." It was stark and smelled of lemon cleaner. A short, balding man with a briefcase was waiting for them in the small foyer. He looked tired but snapped to attention when Adrian entered. "Mr. Romano," the lawyer said, nodding nervously. "I have the papers drafted. Standard confidentiality agreements, plus the marriage license application. The judge is a friend of the family. He waived the waiting period." "Good," Adrian said. He turned to Hallie. "This is Mr. Vance. He will witness." Hallie nodded dumbly. She felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She stood before the officiant, a woman who looked like she had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. There were no vows of love, no poetry, just legal statements. "Do you take this man?" "I do," Hallie said. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "Do you take this woman?" "I do," Adrian said. His voice was steady, grounding. The lawyer placed the document on the podium. Hallie picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold it. The tip of the pen hovered over the line. If she signed this, there was no going back. She was tying herself to the criminal underworld. She thought of Elliot's threat. A problem to be handled. She pressed the pen to the paper. She signed her name, Hallie Parker. Adrian took the pen from her. He signed his name in sharp, angular strokes. Adrian Romano. It is done. The officiant said. Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was not a wedding band. It was a heavy gold signet ring, etched with a crest she did not recognize. I did not have time to buy a proper ring, he said quietly, taking her left hand. This will have to do for now. He slid the heavy gold ring onto her finger. It was too big, spinning loosely until it rested against her knuckle. It felt like a shackle, but also like armor. Let's go, Adrian said, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. As they walked back out into the rain, Adrian's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his steps faltered for a fraction of a second. What is it? Hallie asked, sensing the shift in his tension. Elliot's men just arrived at Ember, Adrian said, his voice grim. They are tearing the place apart looking for a blonde in a cocktail dress. Hallie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My security is handling it, Adrian said quickly, ushering her into the car. They are telling them you were never there. The cameras have been wiped. You are a ghost. Hallie. He slammed the car door and tapped on the partition. Home, he told the driver, and take the long route. Make sure we are not followed. The car pulled away, sliding into the dark, wet streets of Riverton. Hallie slumped back against the leather seat, the adrenaline crashing out of her system. She began to shake again, a reaction to the shock. Adrian watched her from the other side of the seat. The streetlights cast rhythmic shadows across his face. He looked conflicted, a strange mix of protectiveness and guilt warring in his expression. He had saved her, yes, but he had also just drafted a civilian into a war. We are going to my penthouse, he said. It is the most secure building in the city. Keycard access only. Guards in the lobby. You will be safe there. Hallie just nodded. She could not speak. The ride to the penthouse took 20 minutes. When they arrived, they drove into a private underground garage. They took a dedicated elevator that opened directly into the foyer of an apartment that was larger than Hallie's parents' entire house. It was beautiful, but cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the rain-soaked city. The furniture was modern, minimalist and dark. It looked like a place where someone slept, not where someone lived. Adrian locked the elevator behind them. You are safe here, he repeated. He led her down a hallway. This is the guest bedroom, he said, opening a door. It had its own bathroom. He walked into the room and opened a drawer, pulling out a black t-shirt and a pair of gray sweatpants. I do not have women's clothes here, he said, handing them to her. Put these on. Get out of that wet dress before you get sick. Hallie took the clothes. Thank you, she whispered. Adrian hesitated. He looked at her, standing there in the middle of his guest room, looking small and broken, clutching his t-shirt to her chest. Her hair was a mess of damp tangles. Her mascara was smeared. He took a step closer, but then stopped, maintaining that careful distance he had promised. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, before he gently brushed a wet strand of hair away from her cheek. His fingers barely grazed her skin, light as a feather. You are not alone anymore, Hallie, he said softly. He stepped back. Lock the door if it makes you feel better, he said. I will be right outside. He turned and walked out, pulling the door shut with a soft click. Hallie stood there for a moment, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. She moved mechanically. She stripped off the ruined cocktail dress, leaving it in a heap on the floor. She washed her face in the pristine bathroom sink, scrubbing away the makeup until her skin was raw. She put on Adrian's clothes. The t-shirt hung to her knees, smelling of him. The sweatpants were huge, and she had to tie the drawstring tight to keep them up. She walked back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The ring on her finger glinted in the dim light. Mrs. Romano! The reality of it hit her like a physical blow. She was married to a stranger, to a mafia boss. She had blown up her life in a single night. She curled up on top of the covers, pulling her knees to her chest. The tears came then, hot and silent. She cried for the girl she had been yesterday. She cried for the fear that was still clawing at her throat. Outside in the hallway, Adrian sat on the floor. He leaned his back against the wall next to her door, one leg extended, the other bent with his arm resting on his knee. He loosened his tie, pulling it free from his collar. He scrubbed a hand over his tired face. He could hear her muffling her sobs through the door. Every sound was a dagger of guilt in his gut. He had used her desperation to make a move on the chessboard. He told himself it was necessary. He told himself he was saving her. But as he listened to her cry, he felt less like a savior and more like just another kind of thief. He did not move to the master bedroom. He stayed there, sitting on the hard floor, keeping guard over the door. Eventually, the crying stopped. The breathing from the other side of the door evened out into the rhythm of sleep. Adrian let his head tip back against the wall, closing his eyes. The image of her hand covering his on the table burned in his mind, the way she had looked at him, terrified, but trusting. He promised himself, in the quiet of the dark penthouse, that he would burn the city down before he let Elliot Crane touch her again. He dozed there, an uneasy sentinel in the hallway, while his wife slept in a stranger's bed, wearing his clothes and his ring. The morning sun sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, sharp and unforgiving. It was not the soft, romantic light of a honeymoon suite. It was the stark, gray-white glare of a city waking up after a storm. Hallie Parker opened her eyes and stared at a ceiling she did not recognize. It was high, painted a matte charcoal, and edged with modern crown molding. For a split second, the peaceful oblivion of sleep held her, and she forgot. She forgot the wedding. She forgot the run in the rain. She forgot the nightclub. Then she shifted her hand, and the weight on her finger dragged her back to reality. She lifted her left hand, a heavy gold signet ring, thick and engraved with a crest she didn't know, sat loosely on her ring finger. It was cold against her skin. The memories of the previous night were fractured, like shards of glass in her mind. She remembered the rain. She remembered the fear, sharp and metallic in her mouth. She remembered a man with eyes like steel and a voice that promised safety. And she remembered signing something. Panic, cold and immediate, flooded her chest. She sat up, throwing off the heavy duvet. She was wearing a black t-shirt that smelled of sandalwood and expensive cologne, a scent that was not hers, and definitely not Elliot's. She scrambled out of the massive bed, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. She didn't check the mirror. She didn't care that her hair was a tangled mess or that the oversized sweatpants she was wearing were dragging on the floor. She needed answers. She yanked the bedroom door open and stumbled down the hallway. The penthouse was silent, vast and intimidatingly clean. She followed the smell of coffee in the living room, which was larger than the entire lobby of the hotel she worked at. She found him. Adrian Romano stood by the kitchen island, looking out at the city skyline. He was dressed in a crisp white dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and black dress pants. His tie was undone, hanging loosely around his neck, giving him an air of casual, dangerous elegance. He held a ceramic mug in one hand, steam curling up into the air. He turned as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Good morning," he said. His voice was deep, a rumble that she felt in the soles of her feet. Hallie stopped in the middle of the room, clutching the fabric of the t-shirt. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice raspy with sleep and fear. "Why am I here? Why am I wearing this?" She held up her hand, the gold ring catching the light. Adrian took a slow sip of his coffee. He set the mug down on the marble counter with a soft clink. He didn't look apologetic. He didn't look malicious. He looked resolved. "You were cold," he said simply, "and you were terrified." "I remember running," Hallie said, her breath coming in short gasps. "I remember the club. But this," she gestured to the ring, to the room, "this feels fuzzy. Did you drug me?" Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly, a flash of hurt crossing his features before he masked it. I gave you water. Hallie, only water. You were in shock. Adrenaline does strange things to the memory. He reached into the pocket of his slacks and pulled out a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the smooth marble surface toward her. Beside it, he placed a tablet. Read it, he said. Hallie walked forward, her legs feeling like jelly. She picked up the paper. It was a marriage license. Hallie Parker, Adrian Romano. Signed, dated. Stamped by a notary at 3 a.m. She stared at her signature. It was shaky, the loops of the H jagged, but it was hers. No, she whispered. I wouldn't just... She looked up at him. Accusation burning in her eyes. You manipulated me. I was hysterical. I wasn't thinking straight. You took advantage of me. Adrian didn't flinch. He tapped the screen of the tablet. Watch. Hallie looked down. It was a video file. She pressed play. The screen showed the interior of the stark, neon-lit chapel. Hallie saw herself. Wet hair plastered to her skull, wearing Adrian's suit jacket over her ruined dress. She looked pale, ghostly, but her eyes were focused on the camera. Hallie, Adrian's voice came from off-camera. Do you understand what we are doing? Yes, the Hallie on the screen said. Her voice was not slurred. It was clear. I am marrying you. Why? Because I want to be safe, she said. Because I do not want to belong to Elliot anymore. The video ended. Hallie stared at the black screen. The evidence was irrefutable. She'd not been coerced physically. She'd not been drugged. She had looked that man in the eye and chosen this. She looked up at Adrian. The fight drained out of her, leaving her hollow. You said yes last night, Adrian said softly. Hallie dropped the tablet onto the counter. It clattered loudly in the silence. I was scared out of my mind, she whispered. That is not consent. Adrian, that is desperation. It is both, he countered, his voice steady. I told you what this was. I told you it was a shield. I gave you an hour to walk away. You chose the ring. He walked around the island, stopping a few feet from her. I did not touch you. Hallie, I drove you here. I gave you my bed, and I slept on the floor in the hallway. I have kept my word. You are safe. Safe? Hallie laughed, a brittle, hysterical sound. I am married to a Mafia boss. How is that safe? Before Adrian could answer, a buzzing sound cut through the air. Hallie looked at the counter. Lying next to the fruit bowl was her clutch bag, the one she thought she had left at the venue. Her phone was vibrating against the marble, the screen lighting up with a photo she instantly recognized. Mom, my phone, she gasped, reaching for it. You went back for it? My men retrieved it before Elliot's security could sweep the bathroom, Adrian said. Do not answer it. Hallie's thumb hovered over the green button. It is my mother. Adrian, she must be sick with worry. If you answer that phone, Adrian said, his voice sharpening into a command, Elliot will be listening, or he will be standing right next to her. They will twist whatever you say. They will claim I kidnapped you. They will claim you are being held against your will. He is going to claim that anyway, Hallie snapped. If you stay silent, they have nothing, Adrian insisted. Silence makes them panic. Panic makes them make mistakes. The phone stopped ringing, then it started again immediately. This time, the name on the screen was Elliot. Hallie stared at the name. A phantom sensation of his fingers digging into her wrist ghosted over her skin. She recoiled from the phone as if it were a snake. Adrian reached out and silenced the call. He picked up the phone and powered it off completely. He looked at her, his expression softening. You cannot go back to being Hallie Parker today, he said gently. Hallie Parker is a victim. Hallie Romano is a fortress. You have to stay here, just until the dust settles, just until we figure out the next move. Hallie wrapped her arms around herself, looking around the sleek, prison-like luxury of the penthouse. She felt trapped again, just like she had with Elliot, but this trap had an open door. Adrian had told her she could leave. He just strongly advised against it. Fine, she said, her voice trembling. I will stay, but I have rules. Adrian crossed his arms, leaning back against the counter. Name them. Separate bedrooms, Hallie said, holding up a finger. I am not sleeping in the same bed as you. I don't care what that piece of paper says. Done, Adrian said immediately. There are 3 guest suites. Take your pick. Second, Hallie said, her voice gaining a little more steel. No pretending in private. We are not a couple. We are allies, partners. Whatever this is, but you do not touch me. You do not act like my husband inside these walls. I already promised you that, Adrian said, his jaw tightening slightly. I do not go back on my word. And third, Hallie said, taking a deep breath, I want to talk to a lawyer, a real one, not your notary friend. I want to know if I can get this annulled without Elliot finding out. Adrian's eyes darkened, but he nodded once. I will have my personal counsel come by tomorrow, he said. He will explain your options, but I will tell you now. Annulment is public record. Elliot will see it. He pushed the mug of coffee toward her. Drink. You look like you're about to fall over. Hallie took the mug. The warmth seeped into her cold fingers. She took a sip. It was perfect. Black. Strong. Exactly how she needed it. The day passed in a blur of anxiety and strange, quiet moments. Hallie spent most of it in the guest room, pacing, trying to process the magnitude of what she had done. She watched the news on the small TV in the room. Local news channels were already running the story. Socialite bride vanishes from rehearsal dinner. They showed a picture of her and Elliot smiling at a gala. She looked happy in the photo, but Hallie remembered that night. Elliot had pinched her side right before the shutter clicked because she wasn't smiling wide enough. By evening, the hunger she had been ignoring became impossible to suppress. She ventured out into the main living area. The smell of garlic and roasting tomatoes hit her first. She followed it to the kitchen. Adrian was there, sleeves still rolled up, an apron tied loosely around his waist. He was chopping basil with a speed and precision that was mesmerizing. A pan of sauce simmered on the stove, filling the air with a rich, comforting aroma. You cook, Hallie observed. Stopping by the island. Adrian glanced up. His face was different when he wasn't talking about business, less guarded. My grandmother was Neapolitan, he said, scraping the basil into the pan. If I didn't learn to cook, she threatened to disown me. It is the only useful skill she thought a man needed. He gestured to a stool. Sit. It is almost ready. Hallie sat. It felt surreal. She was sitting in the kitchen of a Mafia boss, waiting for him to serve her pasta pomodoro. He plated the food and set it in front of her. It looked restaurant quality. He poured 2 glasses of red wine, hesitated, and then poured one of the glasses into the sink. He replaced it with a glass of sparkling water for her. I figured you might not want alcohol yet, he murmured. Thank you, Hallie said quietly. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was incredible, but Hallie's stomach was in knots. She pushed a piece of penne around her plate. Why are you being nice to me? She asked suddenly. Adrian paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. I am not being nice. Hallie, I am being civil. There is a difference. You gave me your room. You are cooking me dinner. You are respecting my rules. That is more than Elliot ever did. Adrian set his fork down. He looked at her across the island. The domesticity of the scene, the warm light, the smell of food, the quiet clink of silverware, felt fragile, like a bubble about to burst. Elliot is a boy who thinks power means controlling people, Adrian said. I know that power means protecting people. You are under my roof. That means you are under my protection. I do not mistreat what I protect. He reached across the island to grab the basket of bread. As he did, his arm brushed against her shoulder. It was a fleeting contact, a mere graze of cotton against bare skin. But both of them froze. Hallie stopped breathing for a second. She didn't pull away. She felt the heat radiating from him, the solid presence of him. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed down to that point of contact. Adrian pulled back slowly, his eyes lingering on hers for a fraction of a second too long before he focused on the bread. Eat, he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. You need the strength. After dinner, the walls of the penthouse started to feel like they were closing in. Adrian noticed Hallie checking the locks on the windows for the 3rd time. Come with me, he said, grabbing a blazer from the back of a chair. Where? Hallie asked, eyeing him warily. You think I am a monster? Adrian said. "You think my whole world is blood and guns. I want to show you the truth." He took her down to the garage. They took a different car this time, an SUV with tinted windows. He drove her through the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the neon lights. He took her to a restaurant first, Il Mare. It was an upscale Italian place near the harbor. They didn't go in the front, they went in through the kitchen. The staff stopped what they were doing when they saw Adrian. "Mr. Romano," the head chef said, wiping his hands on a towel and rushing over. He didn't look terrified, and he looked genuinely happy. "Buonasera. Everything good?" "Marco?" Adrian asked, shaking the man's hand. "Excelente." The chef beamed. "The new supplier you found for the olive oil? Fantastic. Thank you. Boss." They walked through the dining room. Hallie watched as Adrian greeted the host, the busboys, the valets. There was no cowering. There was respect. He knew their names. He asked about their families. "This is legitimate," Adrian told her as they walked back to the car. The restaurant, the staff, the taxes, all clean. He drove her past a security firm, a sleek building with uniformed guards patrolling the perimeter. "My men protect half the corporate buildings in Riverton," he said. "We keep people safe. We stop the kind of people Elliot hires." He turned to look at her at a red light. "I run numbers. Hallie, I run gambling. I loan money to people banks won't touch. I am not a saint, but I have one rule that is written in stone." He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "I do not touch human trafficking. I do not sell women. I do not allow it in my city. If I find someone doing it, I end them." Hallie looked at his profile. The harsh streetlights carved deep shadows into his face. She realized then that the monster she had married had a code. It was a violent, dark code, but it was there. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I need you to know who you are dealing with," he said, pressing the gas as the light turned green. "I am dangerous." "Yes, but I am not him." While Adrian was showing Hallie his empire, Elliot Crane was busy trying to burn it down. On the massive screen in Adrian's living room, a news alert flashed. Hallie and Adrian returned just in time to see it. A spokesperson for the Crane family stood on the steps of the Crane estate. "We are deeply concerned for Hallie's safety," the woman said, her face a mask of practiced concern. "She has been under immense stress lately. We believe she is suffering from a mental health crisis and may have been coerced into running away. We just want her home so she can get the help she needs." Hallie stood in the middle of the living room, trembling with rage. "Mental health crisis," she whispered. "They are making me sound insane." "It is a smart play," Adrian said, his face grim as he watched the screen. "If they paint you as unstable, anything you say against them can be dismissed as delusions. If you say Elliot hit you, they will say you are imagining it." Then her phone buzzed again. She had turned it back on against Adrian's advice. It was a text message from a number she didn't know. "Mom is crying. She says the bank called about the house loan today. Elliot says he can fix everything once you are home. Don't let your family suffer for your mistake. Come home, Hallie." Hallie dropped the phone onto the couch as if it had burned her. "He is threatening them," she choked out. "He's going to take my parents' house." Adrian picked up the phone and read the message. His eyes went cold. "He's squeezing you. He said, he knows you are loyal. He's using your conscience against you." The elevator chimed, the doors slid open, and a man walked in. He was shorter than Adrian, wiry, with a sharp, intelligent face and a scar running through his eyebrow. This was Nico, Adrian's right hand. He didn't look happy. "Boss," Nico said, nodding briefly to Hallie. "We have a problem." "Speak," Adrian said, not taking his eyes off the message. "The Cade Syndicate knows." Nico said, "Word is out on the street. They know you have the girl. They know about the marriage certificate." Adrian looked up. And they are taking it personally," Nico said, his voice dropping. "Cade told his captains that you stole property. He says it is an act of war. They are saying they are going to come and take back what is theirs. Let them try," Adrian snarled, a low, animalistic sound. "They are mobilizing." "Adrian," Nico warned, "this isn't just a dispute anymore. It is an open provocation. If we keep her here, We are painting a target on this building. I am not throwing her to the wolves. Nico, Adrian said, his voice final, double the guard downstairs. Tell the boys to be ready. Nico looked at Hallie, his eyes assessing, then nodded, understood. He turned and left. Hallie stood there, the weight of the conversation crushing her. War, mobilization, targets. She wasn't just a runaway bride anymore. She was the Helen of Troy of Riverton, and she was about to burn the city down. Sleep was impossible. At 2 a.m, Hallie gave up on tossing and turning. She wrapped the duvet around her shoulders like a cape and wandered out into the living room. The glass doors to the balcony were open, letting in the cool, damp night air. Adrian was standing at the railing, looking out over the glittering city. He'd taken off his dress shirt. He was wearing a simple white undershirt, his arms bare to the chill. Hallie hesitated, then stepped out onto the balcony. The wind whipped her hair across her face. Adrian didn't turn, but she knew he sensed her. You should be sleeping, he said. I can't, she replied, moving to stand beside him. She kept a safe distance, clutching the duvet tighter. She looked at his arms. In the moonlight, she could see the scars. There was a long, jagged line running down his left forearm. A knife wound, maybe, or a bullet graze. Is that from the war? She asked softly. Which one? Adrian asked, a dry humor in his voice. I have fought in many. He turned to face her. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes were deep. I heard what Nico said, Hallie whispered. They are coming for me. I am putting you in danger. Maybe I should just go. Maybe I should trade myself for my parents' house. Adrian turned fully toward her then. He stepped closer, invading her personal space for the first time that night. He stopped a foot away, but his intensity bridged the gap. Do not say that, he commanded. Do not ever say that. He looked down at her, his eyes searching her face. You are not currency, Hallie. You are not a bargaining chip. Elliot made you believe that your value comes from what you can do for others. That is a lie. Hallie felt tears pricking her eyes. But I don't know how to be anything else. She confessed, her voice breaking. I don't know how to breathe without someone owning me. Elliot owned me. My family owns my loyalty. Now I have your ring on my finger. Who owns me now? Adrian reached out. For a second, she thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he gripped the railing on either side of her, boxing her in but not touching her. He created a shelter with his body. Look at me, he whispered. She looked up, trapped in his gaze. You own yourself, Hallie. The words were fierce, spoken like a vow. This ring, it is just metal. This penthouse, it is just walls. I am not your owner, I am your guard dog. You tell me to sit, I sit. You tell me to bite, I bite, but you hold the leash. Hallie stared at him, her heart pounding against her ribs. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever given her the power. Thank you, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. Thank you for not touching me. Thank you for not being him. Adrian's gaze dropped to her lips for a split second, raw hunger flashing in his eyes, before he wrenched his gaze back to hers. I am not him, he rasped. He pushed himself off the railing and stepped back, putting distance between them again. Go to sleep. Hallie, tomorrow, the real fight starts. He turned back to the city, his shoulders tense. Hallie watched him for a moment longer, the cold wind biting at her skin, before she turned and went back inside, carrying the strange, terrifying weight of her own freedom. The lawyer, Mr. Vance, sat at the dining table in the penthouse, his briefcase open and piles of documents spread across the polished wood. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, but inside, the atmosphere was heavy with the cold reality of the law. Hallie sat opposite him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had expected a solution. She had expected a quick signature that would undo the madness of the night before. So, Hallie said, her voice tight, you're saying I can't leave? Mr. Vance adjusted his glasses, looking uncomfortable. I am saying that an annulment is possible, Mrs. Romano, but it is dangerous. If we file for annulment now, Less than 24 hours after the ceremony, we have to provide a reason. If we cite duress or intoxication, Elliot Crane's legal team will pounce. He slid a document across the table. Elliot has already filed a preemptive motion claiming you were abducted and brainwashed. Vance continued, if you annul this marriage, you legally revert to being Hallie Parker. And Hallie Parker has co-signed 3 separate loans for her father's medical treatments, all of which are held by banks quietly owned by the Crane Family Holding Company. Hallie felt the blood drain from her face. 3 loans. The fine print was buried, Vance said sympathetically. If you leave the protection of the Romano estate, Elliot can call those loans in immediately. He'll bankrupt your parents within a week. He will sue you for the cost of the wedding, the venue, and emotional damages. You will be buried in litigation and debt for the rest of your life, and you will likely be forced to settle. And the settlement, Adrian said from where he leaned against the wall, his voice low and dark, will be returning to him. Hallie looked at Adrian. He was watching her. His face impassive, but his eyes were alert. He rigged the game, Hallie whispered, staring at the table. Even before the wedding, he made sure I couldn't leave. He is a strategist, Adrian said, pushing off the wall and walking over to the table. He knew you might run. He built a cage that extends beyond the altar. Hallie put her head in her hands. She felt the walls closing in again. She had traded one prison for another, and now the old prison was threatening to burn down everything she loved if she didn't return. I can't go back, she choked out, but I can't let him destroy my parents. Adrian placed a hand on the back of her chair. He didn't touch her skin, but she felt the heat of him. Then don't go back, Adrian said firmly, and don't annul the marriage. Not yet. He looked at Vance. Leave us. The lawyer nodded, gathered his papers quickly, and exited the apartment, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. Adrian pulled out the chair next to Hallie and sat down, turning his body toward her. We play the long game, he said. To the outside world, this marriage is real. You are Mrs. Romano. You are untouchable. That freezes the loans because Elliot knows if he touches your family's finances, I will touch his family's supply lines. It is a stalemate. And in the meantime, Hallie asked, looking up at him with watery eyes. In the meantime, we build you a life that he cannot touch, Adrian said. You need your own money, Hallie. You need your own standing. You cannot just be my wife. You need to be independent. He paused, gauging her reaction. I own a hotel in the Uptown District. The event spaces are dated. They are bleeding money because the design is 10 years old. You are an event coordinator. You know what clients want. Hallie blinked, confused by the sudden pivot. You want me to work for you? I want you to fix my hotel, Adrian corrected. I will pay you a consultant's salary, a real salary. Hallie, not the allowance Elliot gave you. You save it. You build a safety net. When you have enough to pay off your father's debts yourself, then we talk about annulment. Hallie stared at him. It was a lifeline, a job, a purpose. It was not charity, it was work. I can do that, she said, sitting up straighter. I have ideas. I have a lot of ideas. Then get to work. Mrs. Romano, Adrian said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. The transition was jarring, but Hallie threw herself into it with the desperation of someone drowning. For the next 2 weeks, she didn't just live in the penthouse. She worked. She arrived at the Gilded Lily, Adrian's uptown hotel, every morning at 8. She wore sharp blazers and trousers she had ordered online with Adrian's credit card. A loan, she insisted, that she would pay back with her first check. The staff at the hotel was terrifyingly deferential. Good morning, Mrs. Romano, the concierge would say, bowing his head. Let me get that door for you. Mrs. Romano. The maintenance manager would insist. At first, Hallie flinched every time she heard the name. It felt like a costume she hadn't earned. She would open her mouth to say, just call me Hallie, but then she would remember Elliot's threats. She would remember the safety that the name provided. So she swallowed her discomfort and nodded. Thank you, she would say. She was good at this, without Elliot hovering over her shoulder, criticizing her taste. Her creativity flourished. She tore down the heavy, dusty drapes in the ballroom and replaced them with airy, modern linen. She redesigned the lighting grid. She negotiated with florists who, upon hearing the name Romano, gave her discounts she had never seen before. But the shadow of her old life was never far away. One rainy Tuesday evening, Hallie was in Adrian's office at the nightclub, Ember, going over fabric swatches. Adrian was at his desk, reviewing security reports. It was a quiet, almost domestic scene, the kind of peace Hallie had started to crave. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A news alert, local business owner harassed, Parker Hardware cited for multiple code violations. It was her father's store. Hallie tapped the link. The article detailed how city inspectors, clearly paid off, had descended on her father's small shop, citing him for everything from faulty wiring to signage issues. They were threatening to shut him down. "Elliot," she whispered, the phone shaking in her hand. "He's going after the store now." She stood up, the fabric swatches sliding to the floor. "He is never going to stop. Adrian, he is going to pick them apart piece by piece until I surrender." Adrian looked up, his eyes instantly tracking her distress. He stood and walked around the desk. "I will send a contractor to fix the violations," he said calmly. "My lawyers will contest the citations." "It doesn't matter," Hallie cried, the stress of the last few weeks finally cracking her composure. "He will find something else. He will hurt them to get to me. Maybe I should just go back. Maybe I am being selfish." She turned away, hiding her face, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She felt small, defeated, and utterly exhausted. She heard Adrian's footsteps approach, heavy and deliberate. Then the office door clicked shut and the lock turned. He crossed the room. She felt him standing behind her, a wall of solid warmth. "Hallie," he said, his voice low. He didn't grab her. He reached out and gently took her by the shoulders, turning her around. She kept her head down, tears dripping onto the carpet, ashamed of her weakness. Adrian didn't let her hide. He slid one hand up her arm and cupped the back of her head, guiding her face into his chest. "Come here," he murmured. Hallie crumbled. She leaned into him, her hands balling into fists against his crisp dress shirt. He smelled of rain and safety. His arms came around her, strong and secure, holding her together when she felt like falling apart. They stood there for a long time, Hallie weeping quietly into his shirt, Adrian resting his chin on the top of her head, his hand rubbing slow, soothing circles on her back. "I am so tired," she whispered into the fabric of his shirt. "I am so tired of being afraid." "I know," Adrian said, his voice rumbling against her ear. "I know." She pulled back slightly, sniffing, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked up at him. His face was close, his expression unguarded for the first time. There was no calculation in his eyes, only a raw, intense concern that took her breath away. Adrian lifted his hand, his thumb brushed a tear from her cheek, then traced the line of her jaw, his skin rough but his touch agonizingly gentle. "You are doing everything right," he told her softly. "You are fighting. That is what matters." Hallie looked at his mouth, then she looked into his eyes. The air in the room shifted, thickening with a sudden, electric tension. The grief and fear faded, replaced by something hotter, something that made her heart hammer a different rhythm. She didn't step back. She leaned in, just a fraction of an inch. Adrian went still. His hand on her jaw tightened slightly, his thumb resting near the corner of her mouth. His breathing synced with hers, deep and steady. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every second to pull away. He paused, his lips hovering inches from hers, a silent question in the dark gaze. Hallie didn't pull away. She closed the distance. His lips were warm and firm. It wasn't a frantic kiss. It was slow, deep and unhurried. It tasted of coffee and suppressed longing. Adrian groaned low in his throat, a sound of surrender, and his other hand came up to cradle the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair. Hallie melted against him. For the first time in months, she didn't feel hunted. She felt held. She clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss, pouring all her confusion and desperate need into the contact. It lasted for an eternity, and it lasted for a second. Hallie pulled back, breathless, her lips tingling. She stared at him, her eyes wide. Reality crashed back in. She stammered, her voice trembling. I don't know why I did that. Adrian didn't move away. He kept his hands cupping her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. I don't know if I kissed you because I wanted to, Hallie whispered. Honest and raw, or because you feel like a shield, and I just really needed a shield. Adrian searched her eyes. His expression was fierce, almost painful in its intensity. I can be a shield, Hallie, he rasped, his voice rough with emotion. I can be the wall between you and the world. I can take the bullets, but I will not be a replacement cage. He dropped his hands and stepped back, putting a foot of distance between them. Do not kiss me to hide, he said. Kiss me when you are ready to be seen. The truce between them shifted after that night. The air in the penthouse was charged with a static electricity that neither of them acknowledged. They moved around each other carefully, polite but aware, like two planets caught in the same gravity well. 2 nights later, Adrian took her to the Sapphire, one of his premier restaurants downtown. It was a business dinner. He said he wanted her opinion on the layout for a private party. The restaurant was busy, filled with chatter and the clinking of silverware. They sat at a corner booth near the front windows, reviewing blueprints spread out on the table. So if we move the bar to the south wall, Hallie was saying, pointing at the paper, it opens up the flow for the sound of screeching tires cut her off. Hallie looked up. Through the plate glass window, she saw a black sedan slow down in the street. The back window rolled down. A barrel of a submachine gun poked out. Down, Adrian roared. He didn't dive for cover, he dove for her. He launched himself across the table, crashing into her, tackling her off the leather bench and onto the floor behind the heavy oak bar. The world exploded. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Glass shattered, raining down like deadly confetti. Wood splintered. Screams erupted from the dining room. Hallie lay curled on the floor, her face pressed into the carpet. Adrian was on top of her, covering her entire body with his. He was a heavy, solid weight, shielding her head with his arms, his legs tangled with hers. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, a frantic, powerful rhythm. Stay down, he growled into her ear. Do not move. The gunfire stopped as quickly as it had started. Tires squealed again as the car sped off. Silence hung for a second, followed by the wails of terrified patrons. Adrian shifted, lifting his weight off her slightly. Are you hit? He demanded, grabbing her face and checking her over with frantic hands. Hallie, look at me. Are you hit? I don't think so, Hallie stammered, shaking uncontrollably. There was glass in her hair. Adrian pulled her up, checking her arms, her torso. He ignored the cut on his own cheek where a shard of glass had sliced him. Stay here, he ordered. He stood up, his demeanor shifting instantly from protector to commander. Nico, he barked. Nico appeared from the kitchen, gun drawn but held low. Secure the perimeter, Adrian ordered, his voice ice cold. Get the civilians out the back and clean this up. Hallie, still crouching behind the bar, watched in horror. This was not a police scene. This was a military operation. Adrian's men moved with terrifying efficiency. 2 of them began sweeping up the glass immediately. Another was pulling bullets out of the wall with pliers. They were sanitizing the scene. By the time the police sirens wailed in the distance, the worst of the evidence that this was a targeted hit on a mob boss, was disappearing. Hallie stood up, her legs trembling. She looked at the shattered window. She looked at the waiters who were pale but unhurt. This is your life, she whispered. Adrian turned to her. His eyes were hard, adrenaline still flooding his system. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. We are leaving, he said. Now, back at the penthouse. The adrenaline crash left Hallie feeling hollowed out. She sat on the sofa, watching Adrian pace. He was on the phone, barking orders in Italian, his voice rising in fury. He hung up and threw the phone onto the armchair. It was the Cades, he said, running a hand through his hair. They are getting bold. That was a warning shot. Hallie looked at him. There was a smear of blood on his collar. His blood. You could have died, she said softly. You threw yourself in front of me. "It is my job," Adrian said dismissively. "It is not a job. Adrian, it is a war," Hallie shouted, standing up. "And I am the cause of it. People could have died tonight because of me." Before Adrian could respond, the landline in the kitchen rang. Only a few people had that number. Adrian answered it. He listened for a moment, his face darkening, then held the receiver out to Hallie. "It is your mother," he said grimly. Hallie took the phone. "Mom, oh, thank God." Her mother sobbed on the other end. "Hallie, baby, please, I just saw the news about the shooting. You were there, weren't you?" "I am fine." "Mom," Hallie said, gripping the phone tight, "you are not fine. You are with a monster," her mother cried. "I just had coffee with Elliot. He's devastated. Hallie, he cried in front of us. He told us how Adrian brainwashed you. He says he can help you. He says if you just come home, he can fix this mess before anyone gets hurt." Hallie closed her eyes. Elliot. Always Elliot. Even when he was threatening to destroy them. He played the victim. "Mom, he is lying to you," Hallie said. "He's paying for your father's heart medication." "Hallie," her mother screamed, her voice cracking. "The pharmacy bill came today and it was paid. He's trying to take care of us even after what you did. Please, just come home. Fix this." The line went dead. Hallie lowered the phone slowly. Guilt, heavy and suffocating, settled in her chest. Elliot was paying the bills. Elliot was playing the saint. And she was the runaway daughter living with a gangster who got shot at during dinner. She turned to Adrian. "I am ruining everything," she said, her voice dull. "My parents think I am insane. Elliot is winning. And you are bleeding." She pointed to the cut on his cheek. "I am dragging you down with me," she whispered. "Why are you doing this? Why are you fighting a war for a woman you didn't even know a month ago?" Adrian stopped pacing. He looked at her across the room. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. "I didn't say I didn't know you," he said quietly. Hallie frowned. "What?" Adrian walked over to the wet bar and poured himself a drink. He didn't drink it. He just held the glass, staring at the amber liquid. "I saw you," he admitted. 6 months ago, at the Grand Riverton Hotel." Hallie stared at him. "I was working. I was meeting an associate in the lobby. Adrian said, you were coordinating a charity gala. You were wearing a blue dress. You were arguing with a florist who had brought the wrong lilies. You were fierce. You were exhausted. But you were fierce." He turned to look at her. Then Elliot walked in. "And I saw the way your shoulders slumped. I saw the way the light went out of your eyes when he touched you. I saw him grip your arm when you tried to walk away." Hallie felt a chill run down her spine. "You were watching me?" "I noticed you," Adrian corrected, "and then I couldn't stop noticing. I looked into him. I found out who he was. I found out what he was doing to you." He took a step toward her, his eyes burning with a confession that looked painful to speak. "When you walked into my club that night, Hallie, part of me wanted to help you because it was the right thing to do. But a bigger part of me?" He set the glass down with a hard clink. "A bigger part of me married you because I simply could not stand the thought of him owning you for one more second. It was selfish. I wanted to be the one standing between you and him. I wanted to take his prize." Hallie stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It wasn't just business. It wasn't just strategy. You used me," she whispered, "to get to him." "I saved you," Adrian countered, his voice rising. "But yes, I wanted you. I have wanted you since I saw you in that lobby. And I hated myself for it because I knew bringing you into my world was dangerous. But tonight, when I covered you on that floor," he walked right up to her, stopping inches away, his breathing heavy. "I didn't think about the Cades. I didn't think about business. I only thought that if a bullet hit you, I would burn this entire city to ash." Hallie looked up at him, overwhelmed. He was admitting to obsession. He was admitting to selfishness. And yet, in a world of lies and manipulation, it was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. He wasn't a white knight. He was a dragon who had decided to keep the princess for himself. And God help her, she didn't want to leave the dragon's lair. "So what do we do?" she asked, her voice shaking. Adrian reached out, his hand hovering near her face before he dropped it to his side. Respecting the boundary even now, "We stop hiding." He said, "Elliot wants a war? We give him one, but we do it on our terms." He looked at the window where the city lights flickered. No more defense. "Hallie, tomorrow, we go on the offense." The confession hung in the air between them. Heavy and suffocating, Hallie stared at Adrian. The man she had thought was a stranger, a random savior in a storm, had just admitted he had been watching her for months. The revelation twisted inside her chest, a complicated knot of flattery and betrayal. He had seen her when she felt invisible. He had noticed her pain when everyone else ignored it, but he had also cataloged her like an acquisition, waiting for the moment to strike. "You used me," Hallie said again, her voice gaining strength. "You did not just marry me to save me. You married me to hurt him. I am a weapon in your war. Adrian, that is all I am." Adrian took a step toward her, his face etched with a frustration he could barely contain. "It is not that simple," he growled. "Yes, taking you hurt him. I will not lie about that. But if I only wanted to hurt him, I could have burned his warehouses. I could have hijacked his shipments. I chose this way because I wanted you out of his reach and into yours," Hallie shot back. Adrian stopped. He looked at her, his eyes dark and unyielding. "Yes," he said starkly, "into mine. Because I knew I would not break you." Hallie turned away, her hands shaking. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that blurred through the glass. She felt trapped, not by bars or locks, but by the violent, possessive desires of powerful men. Elliot wanted to own her to polish his image. Adrian wanted to own her to satisfy a savior complex mixed with revenge. "I need air," she whispered. "I am going to my room." She did not wait for his permission. She walked down the hallway, the heavy gold ring on her finger feeling like it weighed 10 pounds. The next morning, the penthouse felt like a pressure cooker. Adrian was gone before she woke up, leaving a note that he had meetings with his captains. Hallie paced the living room. She looked at her phone. There was another text from her mother, begging her to come home, claiming Elliot was ready to forgive everything. She realized then that she could not hide in this tower forever. Adrian's protection was a wall, but walls could be besieged. People were getting shot. Her parents were losing their livelihood, and she was just sitting here, letting men decide her fate. She needed to take control. She typed a text to Elliot. Her fingers trembled, but she forced herself to hit send. "Meet me. The Grind Cafe on 4th. 1 hour. Alone. If you bring anyone, I leave." It was a public place. Broad daylight. He would not try anything there. She told herself she could negotiate. She would offer him a quiet annulment, a promise to disappear. If he just left her family and Adrian alone, she would trade her freedom for peace. She did not tell Adrian he would never let her go. He would lock her in. She grabbed her purse, checked the hallway to ensure the coast was clear, and slipped out the service elevator. The Grind Cafe was bustling with the mid-morning rush. The smell of roasted beans and the noise of espresso machines provided a comforting, normal backdrop to the nightmare Hallie was living. She sat at a small table in the back, her back against the wall. She watched the door. 10 minutes late. Elliot walked in. He did not look devastated. He looked immaculate. He wore a navy suit, his hair perfectly styled, a confident smirk playing on his lips. He spotted her and walked over, sliding into the chair opposite her without asking. "Hallie," he said smoothly, "you look tired. The criminal lifestyle does not suit you." "Darling, stop it, Elliot," Hallie said, keeping her voice low and steady. "I am not here to play games. I am here to make a deal." "A deal?" Elliot laughed, signaling a waiter. "I love it when you try to talk business. It is adorable." "I will file for an annulment," Hallie said, ignoring his tone. "I will say I was coerced. I will sign whatever non-disclosure agreement you want. I will leave Riverton in exchange. You forgive my father's loans and you leave Adrian Romano alone." Elliot stared at her. The smile didn't leave his face, but his eyes went dead. "You think you are in a position to negotiate?" he asked softly. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "You ran away from me. Hallie, you embarrassed me." Embarrassed. "And then you ran straight into the bed of a thug like Romano. You traded up to a monster, thinking he would protect you." "He's not a monster," Hallie snapped. "He is a killer," Elliot corrected, "and you are a naive little girl." He pulled his phone out and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo. It was taken from a distance, showing Hallie on the balcony of the penthouse, wearing Adrian's shirt. "We have eyes everywhere," Elliot said, "and we have more than just photos of you looking cozy with the enemy. I have records. Hallie, compromising things that would make it very hard for you to ever get a job or show your face in polite society again." Hallie felt cold. "What are you talking about?" "And as for your father," Elliot continued, taking his phone back, "you think the loans are the problem? My family sold that debt yesterday." He smiled. "A cruel, sharp thing. The Cade Syndicate owns your father's debt now, and Mr. Cade is not as patient as I am. He charges interest in other ways." Hallie gasped. "You sold my parents to the mob. I liquidated an asset." Elliot shrugged. "Just like I'm about to liquidate Romano. You coming here today was a mistake. Hallie, it shows me you are weak. It shows me you are ready to break." He stood up, buttoning his jacket. "There is no deal. You will come home when I tell you to come home. And when you do, you will spend the rest of your life making up for this little rebellion." He dropped a $20 bill on the table. "Coffee is on me." He walked away, leaving Hallie sitting there, shaking, surrounded by people laughing and drinking lattes, completely unaware that her world had just shattered. She did not know how she got back to the penthouse. She walked in a daze, the city sounds muffled by the rushing of blood in her ears. When the elevator doors opened into the foyer, she found Adrian waiting. He was not sipping coffee this time. He was pacing like a caged tiger. When he saw her, he stopped dead. His face was a mask of fury so intense it made her flinch. "Where were you?" he demanded. His voice was not loud, but it vibrated with danger. Hallie stepped into the room, dropping her purse on the floor. "I went for a walk." "Do not lie to me," Adrian roared, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. He marched over to the counter and snatched up a tablet. He tapped the screen and turned it around. It showed grainy surveillance footage of her sitting in the cafe, across from Elliot. "My men tracked you," Adrian snarled. "You met with him. After everything I told you, after he threatened your family, you walked right into his line of fire. Are you insane?" "I was trying to fix it," Hallie yelled back, her own anger igniting. "I was trying to stop the war you started. I started this war to keep you safe," Adrian shouted, throwing the tablet onto the couch. "And you go behind my back to negotiate with a viper? What did you think would happen? Hallie, did you think he would shake your hand and wish you luck? I thought I could save my parents," Hallie screamed, tears burning her eyes. "He sold their debt to the Cades. Adrian, because of me, because I am here with you." Adrian froze. "He sold the debt?" "Yes," Hallie cried. "He has photos of me. He has leverage. He laughed at me. He told me I was weak." She marched up to him, shoving his chest with both hands. He did not budge, solid as a rock, but she shoved him again. "I am tired of this," she yelled. "I am tired of him controlling me. I am tired of you controlling me. I am tired of men making choices for me and telling me it is for my own good." She went to shove him a third time, but Adrian caught her wrists. His grip was iron tight for a split second, halting her assault. Hallie looked up at him, chest heaving, her hair wild, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Let me go," she hissed. Adrian looked down at her. His anger was still there, burning hot, but something else clashed against it. He saw the fire in her. He saw the refusal to be a victim. His grip on her wrists loosened instantly. He did not let go, but his hold turned from a restraint into a caress. His thumbs brushed over the pulse points of her wrists, feeling her heart hammering against her skin. "I cannot let you go," he rasped, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "If I let you go, they will destroy you. I don't care," Hallie breathed, staring at his mouth. The air between them snapped, the fear, the anger, the adrenaline. It all twisted into a single, undeniable knot of desire. Hallie did not think. She surged up on her tiptoes. She kissed him. It was a collision. It was messy and desperate and fueled by rage. Adrian froze for a heartbeat, stunned by her aggression, before a low growl tore from his throat. He released her wrists and slammed his hands against the wall on either side of her head, boxing her in, trapping her with his body. He deepened the kiss, taking control, his mouth devouring hers. Hallie's hands flew to his shirt, gripping the fabric, pulling him closer until there was no air left between them. She felt the hard planes of his chest, the heat radiating off him. He tasted of scotch and fury. Adrian's hands left the wall. One tangled into her hair, tilting her head back, exposing her throat, the other arm wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly off the floor, pressing her body flush against his. It was overwhelming. It was the kind of passion that burned cities. Hallie felt his forehead rest against hers as they broke the kiss for a gasp of air. "You drive me mad," Adrian whispered, his voice wrecked. "You make me want to burn the world down just to keep you warm." Hallie reached up, her fingertips tracing the sharp line of his jaw, feeling the rough stubble. She looked into his eyes, dark, dilated, consuming. For a moment, she wanted to say yes. She wanted to drag him to the bedroom and forget Elliot, forget the Cades, forget the danger. But the image of Elliot's smirk flashed in her mind. You traded up to a monster. She couldn't do this. Not like this. Not when she was still a pawn. Hallie pulled back. She placed her hands on his chest and pushed, gently this time. "Stop," she whispered. Adrian stopped instantly. He went still, his breathing ragged. He didn't step away immediately, his forehead still resting against hers, his eyes closed as he fought for control. "I can't," Hallie said, her voice trembling. "I can't blur this. I can't use you to forget him. That makes me just like him." Adrian opened his eyes. He looked at her, searching her face. He saw the resolve there. He nodded once, a sharp, jerky motion. He stepped back, putting 3 feet of distance between them. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure slowly returning, though his eyes still burned. "You are right," he said hoarsely. "I apologize." He turned away, walking toward the window, putting the width of the room between them. "We need to focus," he said, his voice sounding detached, almost cold. "If Cade owns the debt, the timeline has moved up. They are going to make a move." As if on cue, the elevator dinged. Nico burst into the room. He looked pale. He held a folder in his hand. "Boss," he said, ignoring the thick tension in the room, "we found the leak." Adrian turned, his demeanor shifting instantly from lover to Dawn. "Who?" Nico threw the folder onto the table. It slid across the marble surface, spilling photos. "It is Marco." Hallie gasped. Marco? The man who had driven her to the hotel the other day? The man who smiled and opened doors? "He has been meeting with Cade's lieutenants for a month," Nico explained rapidly. "He is feeding them our patrol routes. He told them about the dinner at the Sapphire. That is how they knew where you were." Adrian's face went terrifyingly blank. "Marco is like a brother to me." Cade offered him his own territory, Nico said. "Money, power, and in exchange, Marco gave them the plan." "What plan?" Hallie asked, stepping forward. Nico looked at her, then at Adrian. "They are not just going to attack again," Nico said grimly. "They are planning to end this permanently. They are going to snatch you. Mrs. Romano?" He pointed to a transcript in the file. "The plan is to kidnap you. Then they are going to stage a crime scene. They are going to make it look like Adrian killed you in a jealous rage. They fake your death, plant the evidence, and send Adrian to prison for life. And while he is rotting in a cell, they ship you off to South America or Eastern Europe, somewhere you never come back from." Hallie felt the blood drain from her body. It was monstrous. It was thorough. It was exactly something Elliot would devise. Adrian stared at the file. He didn't scream, and he didn't throw anything. He went deadly quiet. "Get the car," he told Nico softly. "Where are you going?" Hallie asked. "To find Marco," Adrian said, "and to ask him why he sold my life for a few city blocks." He walked out, not looking back at Hallie. Left alone in the penthouse, Hallie felt the walls closing in again. Kidnap, fake death, prison. She was the anchor dragging Adrian down. As long as she was here, he was vulnerable. as long as she was Mrs. Romano. The target was painted on his back. She had to leave, not to go back to Elliot, but to disappear. If she wasn't here, they couldn't kidnap her. If she filed the annulment herself, publicly, from a safe distance, it would ruin their frame-up plan. She needed to get out of the city. She needed to hide. She picked up her phone. She dialed her mother. "Mom?" she whispered. "Hallie?" Her mother sounded tired. "Please tell me you are coming home. I am leaving." "Mom," Hallie said, "but not home. I need to go away for a while. But I need to see you first. I need to say goodbye. And I need you to bring the paperwork for the loans." "Okay," her mother said, sounding relieved. "Okay, honey, where?" "St. Jude S," Hallie said. "The old church on the west side. It is quiet. Meet me there in an hour. Please." "Mom, don't tell Elliot." "I won't," her mother promised. "Just come." Hallie hung up. She grabbed a coat, pulled a beanie low over her blonde hair, and changed into sneakers. She scribbled a note for Adrian. "I am sorry. I have to save you from me." She left the ring on the counter. It clinked softly against the marble. She took the service stairs down 40 flights, avoiding the lobby guards. She slipped out the back exit into the alley. It was raining again. A light, miserable drizzle. Hallie hurried through the streets. She hailed a cab 2 blocks away and gave the address of the church. St. Jude's was a stone structure on the edge of the city, surrounded by overgrown hedges. It was empty this time of day. Hallie paid the driver and stepped out onto the wet sidewalk. She saw her mother's sedan parked near the entrance. "Mom," she called out, walking toward the car. The driver's side door opened, but it wasn't her mother who stepped out. It was Marco. He wore a leather jacket and a regretful smile. "Hello, Mrs. Romano," he said. Hallie froze. She turned to run, but 2 men stepped out from behind the hedges, blocking the sidewalk. Trapped, she realized with a sickening jolt that her mother hadn't told Elliot. Elliot had been listening to her mother's phone the whole time. Or maybe Marco had been tracking her phone. "Adrian will kill you," Hallie said, her voice shaking but loud. "He knows. Marco, he knows you are the leak." Marco's smile faltered. "He knows. He's coming for you right now." Hallie lied, stepping back. "Then we better make this quick," Marco said, pulling a gun from his waistband. "Get her!" The 2 men lunged. Hallie did not scream. She remembered the lesson Adrian had given her in the gym just 3 days ago. Go for the soft spots, eyes, throat, groin. As the first man grabbed her arm, she dropped her weight and drove her elbow back into his ribs with everything she had. He grunted, his grip loosening. She spun around and raked her nails across the second man's face, aiming for his eyes. He howled, stumbling back, clutching his bleeding cheek. She broke free and sprinted toward the street. She made it 5 steps. A van screeched around the corner, mounting the curb and cutting her off. The side door slid open. Marco was there, and he didn't use the gun. He tackled her from behind, his weight crushing her into the wet pavement. Hallie fought. She kicked, she bit his hand, she screamed Adrian's name, but there were 3 of them. They dragged her toward the open door of the van. She kicked out one last time. Her sneaker catching on the edge of the curb, it tore off her foot. They shoved her inside. A heavy hand clamped a rag over her mouth. The smell of chemicals filled her nose. The last thing Hallie saw before the darkness took her was her single white sneaker lying in a puddle on the sidewalk, stained with a smear of blood from where she had scraped her knee. The van door slammed shut. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Riverton glistening under the harsh glare of streetlights. But inside the alleyway next to St. Jude's Church, the world was dark. Adrian Romano stood perfectly still. He was looking down at a puddle of dirty water. In the center of the puddle lay a single white sneaker. Near it, on the rough concrete of the curb, was a smear of blood. It was bright red, fresh. Nico stood a few feet behind him, holding a phone to his ear, his face pale. He lowered the device slowly. "We found the van on traffic cams," Nico said, his voice low. It headed south, toward the shipping district. Adrian did not scream. He did not throw anything. A terrifying glacial calm settled over him, freezing the fire that usually burned in his eyes. He reached down and picked up the sneaker. It was small, canvas, soaking wet. He gripped it until his knuckles turned white. "Call Miller," Adrian said. The command was quiet, devoid of inflection. Nico blinked. "The detective?" "Boss, if we bring the cops in—" "Call him," Adrian interrupted, turning around. His face was a mask of stone. "Tell him I am cashing in every favor he owes me. Tell him I know where the bodies are buried, and I will give him a map if he gets a TAC team to the docks in 20 minutes. But the Cades—" Nico started. "I do not care about the Cades," Adrian said, walking past him toward the car. "I do not care about the territory. I do not care about the code. They took my wife." He opened the car door, the metal groaning under his grip. "Burn it all down, Nico. Every favor, every bribe, every alliance. I want the entire city looking for that van. And if anyone gets in my way, you go through them." Hallie woke up to the smell of salt water and rotting wood. Her head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic pain. She tried to move her hands, but they were bound tight behind her back. Rough hemp rope dug into her wrists. She was sitting in a hard wooden chair, her ankles tied to the legs. She blinked, her vision swimming into focus. She was in a cavernous space, a warehouse. Dust motes danced in the beams of light coming from high, grime-streaked windows. Crates were stacked in towering rows, creating a maze of shadows. "Well, look who is finally awake." The voice was smooth, familiar, and made her skin crawl. Hallie looked up. Elliot Crane stood in front of her. He looked pristine, as if he were about to step onto a yacht. He wore a cream-colored suit, a silk pocket square, and a smile that didn't reach his dead eyes. Marco was standing a few feet away, leaning against a crate. He looked less composed. He kept glancing at the door, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Elliot!" Hallie croaked. Her throat was dry. "Water?" Elliot asked mockingly. He picked up a bottle from a nearby table, unscrewed the cap, and poured it onto the floor in front of her feet. "Oops, clumsy me." He crouched down so he was eye level with her. "You really disappointed me. Hallie, running off to play gangster's wife? It was tacky. You sold my parents." Hallie spat, adrenaline sharpening her mind. "You are the criminal. Elliot, you are working with the Cades." Elliot laughed. It was a dry, soulless sound. "I am a businessman. The Cades are simply partners. And speaking of partners, you are going to help us close a very lucrative deal tonight." He stood up and began to pace, his dress shoes clicking on the concrete floor. "Here is the narrative," he said, gesturing with his hands like he was planning a wedding layout. Adrian Romano, the violent mob boss, discovers his new bride is trying to leave him. In a fit of jealous rage, he kills her. He dumps her body in the harbor. A tragedy. He stopped and looked at her. "We plant the evidence, the murder weapon in his car, your blood on his clothes. He goes to prison for life. The Romano territory collapses. The Cades take over. And everyone lives happily ever after. Except me," Hallie said, watching him carefully. "Oh, you will be fine," Elliot said dismissively. "We have a boat waiting. It leaves in an hour. You are going on a little trip. Eastern Europe, I think. Or maybe South America, somewhere far away where you can start over. You won't be Hallie anymore, of course. But you will be alive, assuming you behave." Hallie's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. He wasn't going to kill her. He was going to traffic her. He was going to erase her. She looked at Marco. "Marco," she said, "you know Adrian. You know he will never stop looking." Marco flinched. He looked at Elliot. Maybe we should move her now, before Romano figures it out. Relax, Marco." Elliot sneered. "Romano is chasing his tail uptown. We have time." Hallie took a deep breath. She forced her hands to stop trembling. She remembered the night in the gym, Adrian's hands on hers, teaching her how to escape restraints. "Flex your wrists," he had said. "Make fists. Create space. Then relax. It buys you millimeters. Millimeters save lives." She began to flex her wrists, expanding the muscles, straining against the coarse rope. It burned, but she ignored the pain. "So that is it?" Hallie asked loudly, drawing Elliot's attention back to her. "You are just a pawn for the Cades. I thought you were the man in charge. Elliot, I thought you were the powerful Crane heir, but here you are. doing their dirty work in a warehouse. Elliot's eyes narrowed. He walked back toward her. "I am in charge," he hissed. "Are you?" Hallie pressed. "Marco looks like he is taking orders from Cade. You look like you are just the wallet. Does Cade even respect you? Elliot? Or does he laugh at you behind your back like everyone else?" "Shut up," Elliot snapped. He raised his hand and backhanded her across the face. Hallie's head snapped to the side, her lips split, the taste of copper filling her mouth, but she smiled. He was angry. Angry men made mistakes. She kept working her wrists. Flex, relax, flex, relax. The rope was loosening, just a fraction. Adrian Romano was driving the SUV himself. He was doing 90 miles per hour down the industrial highway, weaving through traffic with surgical precision. His phone sat on the dashboard, displaying a tracking map. "I have the signal," Nico said from the passenger seat. "Marco's burner phone. It is pinging off a tower near the old naval yards. Warehouse 4. Adrian didn't speak. He stared at the road, his eyes burning. A thin line of blood trickled down his temple from a cut he had sustained an hour ago when he had kicked down the door of a Cade safe house to get the frequency of that phone. He picked up his own phone. "Miller," he said. "I am 5 minutes out." The detective's voice crackled over the speaker. "SWAT is rolling. Adrian, if you go in there shooting, I cannot protect you." "I do not need protection," Adrian said. "I need you to arrest the men who survive." He hung up. He pulled the SUV up to the chain-link fence of the shipyard. He didn't stop. He floored the accelerator. The heavy vehicle smashed through the gate, metal screeching, and roared onto the docks, inside the warehouse. The sound of the crash echoed like a bomb going off. "What was that?" Marco yelled, pulling his gun. Elliot looked toward the heavy metal doors. "Go check it," he ordered. Marco hesitated. He looked at Hallie, then at the door. "Go!" Elliot screamed. Marco ran toward the entrance. Hallie saw her chance. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, but the rope was loose enough to slide one hand free if she had leverage. She looked to her right. There was a small, rickety table holding a heavy industrial work lamp. She waited until Elliot turned his head toward the sound of squealing tires outside. Hallie threw her weight to the side. She tipped the chair, slamming her shoulder into the table. The table crashed over. The lamp hit the concrete and shattered. The bulb exploded with a pop and a flash of sparks. The circuit shorted. The overhead lights flickered violently and then died, plunging the warehouse into gloom, lit only by the gray daylight filtering through the high, dirty windows. "What are you doing?" Elliot shouted, spinning around in the confusion. Hallie wrenched her right hand, skin tore, but she didn't care. Her hand slipped free of the rope. She didn't wait. She reached down, her fingers scrabbling on the dirty floor until she found a jagged shard of the thick glass from the lamp. Elliot was coming for her. She could hear his footsteps. She sawed at the rope binding her left wrist. The glass sliced into her skin, but it sliced the hemp too. The rope gave way. Hallie threw herself forward, the chair falling off her back as the ropes on her ankles held. She slashed at her ankles. "You little witch!" Elliot snarled, grabbing her hair. Hallie screamed and swung the glass shard backward blindly. It connected with Elliot's arm. He yelled and let go. Hallie sliced the last rope and scrambled to her feet. She didn't look back. She ran. She ran into the maze of crates, her breath tearing at her lungs. The warehouse doors exploded inward. The sunlight from the open doors blinded everyone for a second. Adrian stood in the silhouette of the entrance, a gun in his hand. Behind him, Nico and 3 other men fanned out. "Marco!" Adrian's voice was a thunderclap. Marco, caught in the open, raised his gun. "Don't!" Nico shouted. Marco fired wildly. The bullet pinged off a metal beam. Nico didn't shoot. He holstered his weapon and sprinted, tackling Marco around the waist. The 2 men went down hard, rolling across the concrete. Adrian didn't stop for them. He moved into the warehouse, his gun raised, scanning the shadows. "Hallie!" he roared. "Hallie, Adrian!" Hallie screamed from behind a stack of shipping containers. "I am here!" She stepped out, waving her arms. Adrian saw her. For a second, the mask of the killer slipped, and pure, agonizing relief washed over his face. He lowered his gun slightly, taking a step toward her. "You are safe," he breathed. "Come to me." Hallie started to run toward him. Then, an arm hooked around her neck, a cold metal barrel pressed against her temple. "Stop right there! Romano!" Elliot screamed. Adrian froze. His gun snapped back up, aiming directly at Elliot's head. Elliot dragged Hallie backward, using her body as a human shield. He was bleeding from the cut on his arm. His suit ruined, his face twisted into a mask of pure insanity. "Drop the gun!" Elliot shrieked. "Drop it or I paint the wall with her!" Adrian went absolutely still. His eyes were locked on Elliot's. "Let her go." "Elliot," Adrian said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "It is over. The police are outside. You have nowhere to run." "I am taking her," Elliot yelled, backing toward a side exit. "She is mine. She's always been mine. You are nothing but a thug. Romano, a killer. You destroy everything you touch." Hallie felt the gun shaking against her head. She could smell Elliot's sweat and fear. She looked at Adrian. He was 30 feet away, too far to reach her. He couldn't take the shot. Elliot was moving too much, and Hallie was too small. She saw the desperation in Adrian's eyes. He was going to lower his gun. He was going to surrender to save her. No, Hallie thought. She remembered the drive-by shooting. She remembered Adrian throwing his body over hers. She remembered him tackling her to the floor. "He shielded me." She thought, "Now I save him." She didn't struggle. She went limp for a split second, making Elliot support her weight. Then she shifted her stance. She lifted her foot, the one still wearing a sneaker, and brought her heel down. She stomped on Elliot's instep with every ounce of strength she possessed. Crack! Elliot howled in pain. His reflex was instantaneous. He flinched, his grip on her neck loosening, the gun pulling away from her head by 3 inches. That was all Adrian needed. He didn't hesitate. He didn't aim for the head. He fired once. The bullet struck Elliot in the right shoulder. The impact spun him around like a rag doll. His gun flew from his hand, skittering across the floor. Elliot collapsed, screaming, clutching his shattered shoulder. Hallie scrambled away, falling to her knees. Adrian was there in a heartbeat. He holstered his gun and dropped to the floor, gathering her into his arms. "I have you," he gasped, burying his face in her neck. "I have you." Hallie clung to him, sobbing, her hands clutching his jacket. Sirens wailed outside, getting louder. Blue and red lights flashed against the walls. Marco tried to scramble up, reaching for his fallen gun, but one of Adrian's men kicked it away and held him down. Detective Miller and a SWAT team burst through the doors. "Police, drop your weapons." Adrian didn't let go of Hallie. He raised his hands slowly, showing them empty, but he kept one arm wrapped tight around his wife. "It is done," he whispered into her hair. The back of the ambulance was cold, but Hallie didn't feel it. She was wrapped in a foil blanket, sitting on the edge of the stretcher. Adrian sat next to her. He refused to be treated until the paramedics had checked every inch of her. He had a bandage over his eye, and his knuckles were bruised, but he was alive. Detective Miller stood by the doors of the ambulance, closing his notebook. "Crane is in custody," Miller said. "He's singing like a bird, trying to pin it all on the Cades. We have enough to put him away for kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy." "What about Adrian?" Hallie asked, her voice raspy. Miller looked at Adrian. "He called us," Miller said. "He surrendered his weapon and he shot to disable, not to kill. It will take some paperwork and a lot of lawyers, but it looks like defense of a third party." Miller tapped the side of the ambulance. "Do not leave town, Romano. I'm not going anywhere," Adrian said. Miller walked away. Adrian turned to Hallie. He took her hand. His fingers were rough, warm and solid. He looked at the ring on her finger. It was dirty and scratched, but it was still there. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I promised you safety. I failed." Hallie shook her head. "Look." She squeezed his hand. "You came for me," she said. "You called the police. You didn't kill him. You chose a different way." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "We are done with the shadows. Adrian, no more secrets. No more half-truths. No more shadows." Adrian agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. 3 days later, the sunlight in the hospital room was bright and cheerful. Adrian was sitting up in bed, wincing slightly as he shifted. The bullet from the shootout had grazed his ribs, a lucky miss, the doctors said. Hallie sat in the chair beside him. Her lip was healing, and the bruises on her wrists were fading to a dull yellow. Adrian was looking at a stack of papers on his tray table. I spoke to Vance. He said, not looking at her, "We are restructuring." "Restructuring?" Hallie asked. "I am selling the gambling operations," Adrian said. "I am closing down the loan sharking. I am keeping the clubs, the security firm, the restaurants as the legitimate assets." He looked up at her. His eyes were clear. "It means less money. It means less power. The Cades will try to take the territory I am vacating, but I am done. I cannot keep you safe if I am fighting a war on 3 fronts." "You are giving it up?" Hallie asked softly. "For me? For us?" Adrian corrected. He reached out and took her hand. "You asked me once why I married you. You thought it was just to hurt Elliot." Hallie nodded. "It wasn't," Adrian said. "I married you because you were the first person who looked at me and didn't see a boss or a monster. You saw a man, and I wanted to be that man for you." Hallie felt tears prick her eyes. She remembered that first night, the way he had listened to her in the club, the way he had believed her when no one else did. "I remember why I said yes," she whispered. Adrian went still. "You were scared." "No," Hallie said. Yes, I was scared, but that is not the only reason. I said yes because you listened. You gave me water. You gave me a choice. Elliot never gave me a choice. You gave me the power to say no, and because of that, I wanted to say yes." She stood up and leaned over the bed railing. "But that was under duress," she said softly. "That was desperation." She slid the heavy gold ring off her finger. Adrian's face fell. He watched the ring as she held it up in the sunlight. Hallie took his hand. She pressed the warm metal into his palm and closed his fingers over it. "Ask me again," she whispered. Adrian stared at her. He swallowed hard. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Hallie Parker." He said, "Will you marry me?" Hallie smiled. It was a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "Yes," she said. She leaned down. Adrian reached up, his hand cupping the back of her neck, pulling her down to him. The kiss was slow. It was tender. It was a promise made in daylight, with no shadows to hide in. It tasted of antiseptic and hope. Adrian groaned softly, shifting to make room for her on the narrow hospital bed. Hallie sat carefully on the edge, her arms wrapping around his waist, mindful of his bandages. He broke the kiss, resting his forehead against hers. He brushed his thumb over her lower lip. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," Hallie replied. 6 months later, the little house sat on a hill outside the city limits. It was not a penthouse. It was a white clapboard cottage with a porch and a garden that was currently overgrown with wildflowers. The kitchen was filled with the golden light of late afternoon. Hallie stood at the counter, sketching on a tablet. She was designing the launch party for a new art gallery downtown, a legitimate client for her legitimate consulting business. The back door opened. Adrian walked in. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, no suit, no tie. He looked younger. He carried a bag of groceries in one arm. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his face in her hair. "Hey," he murmured. "Hey yourself," Hallie said, leaning back into him. She turned in his arms. He looked tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that came from honest work. He had spent the day with his lawyers, finalizing the sale of the last of his illicit holdings. "Did you get the pasta?" Hallie asked. "I got the pasta," Adrian smiled, "and the wine, and the good cheese." He kissed her. It was a lingering, lazy kiss. Hallie's hands came up to cup his face, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones. She felt him relax completely in her embrace, the last of the tension leaving his body. He pulled back and took her hand. He kissed the gold ring that sat on her finger, a new ring, a simple band that fit perfectly. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Hallie said. They walked out of the kitchen, hand in hand, onto the porch. The sun was setting, casting long, warm shadows across the grass. They walked down the steps and onto the quiet street. There were no bodyguards, no armored cars, just a man and a woman, walking together in the light, They had started in the dark. They had started with lies and desperation and violence. But as Hallie squeezed Adrian's hand and he squeezed back, she knew they had found their way out. They had chosen this life. They had chosen each other. And this time, they were walking into the future with their eyes wide open. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Hallie and Adrian as much as I enjoyed writing it for you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Drop a comment below with your country or city. And if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. What did you think of the ending? Did Adrian make the right choice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. See you in the next story.